So good afternoon. Welcome everybody to this second section of our conference. The first part of this second section forces two contributions on the Council of Europe and the European Union at work. The first speaker will be Professor Sara De Vido, and the second one, Agata Szczypluska from the European Institute for Gender Equality. And after these two contributions, we will have the pleasure and the honor to have a keynote speech by Maria Andriani Costopoulo, President of Grevio, and we have the pleasure to welcome her here in Milan. Professor Sara De Vido is Professor of International Law at the University of Venice, Ca' Foscari, and she is also the author of a recent book on the Istanbul Convention as an interpretative tool at the European and national levels. So she's one of the most expert scholars in this field of Istanbul Convention and European Union. So thank you, Sarah, for being with us, and you have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Professor Nicoletti, for the very kind introduction. Let me first of all thank a lot the organizers of this Pan-European conference. I'm extremely honored to share the panel with such distinguished speakers, and in particular, many thanks to Marina Calloni and Daniela Belliti for the organization. So the topic of my presentation is the European Union and the ratification of the Istanbul Convention. And the purpose of my presentation is to present the procedure that led to the European Union approval of the Council of Europe Istanbul Convention, the legal basis used, the declaration appended upon accession. Then in the second part, I will delve into the effects of the Istanbul Convention on European Union law and policies, in particular, third point, with regard to secondary legislation and the draft proposal for a European Union directive on combating violence against women and domestic violence.
No, potete per cortesia aprire il collegamento agli utenti online che sono e streaming anche. È già a posto?
Okay.
Molte grazie.
Okay, so as I said, the first point, the procedure that led to the European Union approval of the Council of Europe Istanbul Convention. So on the 1st of June 2023, the Council adopted two decisions on the conclusion of the Council of Europe Istanbul Convention after the signature by the Council in 2017. And the outcome was long awaited, encouraged by European institutions and civil society. As we all know, the convention, the Istanbul Convention, has been ratified by 37 states and now also by the European Union. And all European Union member states signed the convention, but 7 states have not ratified it yet. And this morning we listened to the difficulties in some of these countries. So the European Union accession to the Istanbul Convention is envisaged in Article 75 of the Istanbul Convention, and it has been a key priority for the European Commission, clearly emerging from the Gender Equality Strategy 2020 and 2025. So both the Commission and the Parliament have been active in promoting both the European Union accession to the Istanbul Convention and to the adoption of the first legally binding instrument within the European Union on combating violence against women and domestic violence, whose proposal was presented on the 8th of March 2022. And in a moment, I will talk about, in the final part of my presentation, I will talk about the state of the art of the proposal. So the signature of the Istanbul Convention, talking about legal basis, back in 2017, was based on two Council decisions, one regarding matters on judicial cooperation in criminal matters, and the other one on asylum and non-refoulement. And in particular, the decision on judicial cooperation in criminal matters was based on Article 82, Paragraph 2, and 83, Paragraph 1 of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union. As we all know, Article 82 is about the mutual recognition of judgments and judicial decision on police and judicial cooperation in criminal matters, and Article 83 concerned the establishment of minimum rules concerning the definition of criminal offenses and sanctions in some areas of particularly serious crime. So after years of standby, aware of the high level of gender-based violence against women and girls in Europe demonstrated by data, by EGE and other national institutions, the European Parliament adopted on the 10th of May 2023 two legislative resolutions on the draft Council decision on the conclusion of the Istanbul Convention by the European Union. Two legislative resolutions, so very positive outcome, despite the disturbing number of votes against and the abstentions based on ill-founded prejudices concerning the convention. And we listened to a very interesting presentation this morning about the prejudices and the stereotypes surrounding the convention. So both acts, both legislative resolutions, were eventually adopted by the Council on the 1st of June. Two decisions, one related to judicial cooperation in criminal matters, asylum and non-refoulement, and the other one on institution and public administration of the Union. The legal documents entered into force on the 22nd of June 2023. On the 28th of June, the legal instrument was deposited to the Council of Europe, and eventually the Convention entered into force for the European Union on the 1st of October 2023. So, limiting my analysis to judicial cooperation in criminal matters, asylum and non-refoulement, what we can say is that compared to the decisions back in 2017, there are a couple of issues. One is that the legal matters related to judicial cooperation in criminal issues, asylum and non-refoulement, have been combined in the same decision, not in two separate decisions, and that one legal basis, Article 83, Paragraph 1 of the TFEU, has been removed in the decision on the accession. And this legal basis, the removal of this legal basis, which I repeat concerns the harmonization in criminal matters of the minimum rules concerning the definition of crimes and sanctions, the removal of this legal basis does not come as a surprise, because it is a consequence also of an opinion rendered by the Court of Justice of the European Union in 2021. The court, despite affirming that there was no obstacle in the accession by the European Union, denied that Article 83, Paragraph 1 of the TFEU was a relevant legal basis. Obviously, then, the choice is understandable, and I'm making this part on the legal basis, despite being a bit technical, because it matters a lot in terms of impact on European Union legislation. So the choice is understandable concerning the risk of an action for annulment that can be launched by one or more member states against the decision. In my opinion, actually, Article 83, Paragraph 1 of the TFEU was fundamental to ensure a better understanding of the need to associate the protection of victims already envisaged in the Victims' Rights Directive, which is also under discussion for amendments these days, with criminal measures. It goes without saying that criminalization alone is not enough, obviously. Over-criminalization cannot be encouraged, but it can be argued also that it is time to disrupt the dichotomy between soft and hard law, relegating women's issues only to soft law acts. So criminal measures, where appropriate, must be envisaged, if possible, and within the limits of European Union law, for sure. The European Union, upon accession, presented some not really reservations, but declarations that were contained in the instrument of approval submitted and deposited to the Council of Europe on the 28th of June 2023. Well, the declaration is about the legal competencies of the European Union, so you can see what is within the exclusive competence and what is not in the exclusive competence. Then the European Union said about the legal instruments that had been adopted, including action to combat discrimination, action regarding asylum, subsidiary protection, immigration, equality between women and men. And it is interesting that this declaration that was appended upon ratification by the European Union also mentions future developments, obviously the possible future directive, and it is said future developments insofar as that is foreseeable at the time of the analysis. Second point of my presentation is about the consequences for European Union law and policies of European Union accession. So the European Union will be bound by the Convention within the limits of its competencies. So in terms of protection of victims of crimes, prevention, data collection, and also a often neglected legal basis, which is Article 78, paragraph 2 of the TFEU, which concern matters related to migration. Indeed, we all know about the Istanbul Convention and the fundamental chapter on migration issues, so also the European Union is bound by this chapter because the legal basis is the basis also of the Council decision related to the conclusion. One legal instrument that pertains to the implementation of the Istanbul Convention at European Union level is obviously the proposal for a directive on which I will go back in a moment. But I would like also to stress other 2 points related to the accession by the European Union. So one is that the European Commission will play the role of coordinating body according to Article 10 of the Istanbul Convention. And it is pretty important to remember what Grevio said in the several baseline evaluation report, but also in the midterm horizontal review of baseline reports, stressing how cooperation by these coordinating bodies with NGO is deemed as essential in order to ensure a human rights-based approach and policies with focus on the victims. And this should be kept in mind also in the assessment of the implementation of the Istanbul Convention by the European Union. And the second point is the Code of Conduct that was issued by the European Union, and it is an internal instrument of operational nature, not new because there is a similar Code of Conduct that was adopted after the ratification by of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. And this Code of Conduct is a coordination for the representation of the European Union and the Member States with regard to the Convention. Again, the active involvement and reference to women's rights organizations would have been extremely important in that respect. And then the third part of my short presentation concerns the proposal for a European Union directive, which can be considered indeed a step towards the implementation of the Istanbul Convention. So on the 8th of March 2022, as I anticipated, the Commission published a proposal for a directive on combating violence against women and domestic violence, based on, and this is why I stress, sorry for mentioning several articles, but the legal basis really matter in terms of implementation and what the European Union can do or cannot do. And the two legal bases are Article 83, paragraph 1 of the TFEU and Article 82, paragraph 2. So what is interesting in this proposal is that the proposal concerns the criminalization of certain behaviors that fall under the definition of gender-based violence against women and domestic violence. In particular, according to the proposal, because then something changed on the way, the criminalization of rape based on lack of consent, the criminalization of female genital mutilation, and the criminalization of behaviors that fall under under ICT facilitated violence against women, so no consensual sharing of intimate and manipulated materials, cyber stalking, cyber harassment, cyber incitement to violence or hatred based on victim sex or gender by means of ICT. And what is interesting to know, and again, this is a technical aspect which matters a lot during the negotiations these days, is that rape and female genital mutilation were included under the Eurocrime of sexual exploitation, on which there is a long and complex debate, because the European Commission defined sexual exploitation in the proposal back in 2022 as any actual or attempted abuse of a position of vulnerability, differential power or trust, including profiting monetarily, socially, or politically from a sexual act with another person. So these two crimes, according to the Commission, could fall under the Eurocrime of sexual exploitation, legitimizing the use of this legal basis, Article 83, paragraph 1, which is very interesting. And then ICT facilitated violence falling under the Eurocrime of computer crime, also very fascinating and important to respond to current threats. Then the proposal for a directive included provisions on the protection of victims, on access to justice, on victim support and prevention, coordination and cooperation, a key article on individual risk assessment, and we know about the risk assessment, Article 51 of the Istanbul Convention, and also the jurisprudence of the European Court of Human Rights on risk assessment in recent cases on domestic violence. So pivotal and important, and also the role of data collection, which in the proposal for a directive is key for EGE, and I'm sure that we are going to listen in more detail. Obviously, according to the ordinary legislative procedure, then the proposal was submitted to the Council and the European Parliament. And this, obviously, is the path that all secondary legislation follows, but this is the complex part. Indeed, the Council issued, after a Council's legal opinion that was issued in last year, a general approach on the 9th of June. And several countries actually issued statements to express their reservations. Several countries. Because of lack of legal basis, because of the complexity to use this Article 83, paragraph 1 of the TFEU and these Eurocrimes that were mentioned, sexual exploitation and computer crime. But the most significant amendment by the Council is the removal of the provisions related to a EU-wide definition of rape due to the lack of a sufficient legal basis. And the discussion is going on that, obviously also from civil society, NGOs working at European level. Also, the Council considered that online stalking, cyber stalking, no consensual sharing of intimate images should only become a criminal offense across the European Union where such conduct is likely to cause serious harm. But actually, some behaviors might be per se inherently harmful. So that is problematic, not to mention that the definition of gender has been removed and also intersectionality. The Parliament, on the contrary, adopted a much broader approach to the issue, and indeed the FEM and the LIBE committees were competent to write a very interesting report that was debated. On the 28th of June 2023, the two committees adopted their final report with a large majority. And then the July plenary session of the European Parliament confirmed the decision without a vote to go into interinstitutional negotiations. To just mention three aspects of the proposal of the European Parliament and how advanced this proposal is. Well, obviously stressing the importance of including rape among the offenses covered by the directive. But not only this, the European Parliament proposed a longer list of behaviors, including sexual assault, intersex genital mutilation, forced sterilization, forced marriage, sexual harassment at work. Also aggravating circumstances. I would like just to mention one aggravating circumstance there was included in the amendments by the European Parliament, the intention of the crime was to punish victims for their sexual orientation, gender expression, gender identity, sex characteristics, skin color, religion, social origin, and political belief. And then especially support services. So the process is ongoing, negotiations, the trialogue is going on. We will see what the outcome will be. Whether or not the directive is going to be adopted, probably yes. The problem is how good this directive will be, and of course Gravio then will examine the conformity of one of these legal documents to the legal obligations stemming from the Istanbul Convention. And to conclude, one comment on having both the European Union accession to the Istanbul Convention and the European Union directive. Because there might be skepticism of having both, having ratified the convention and having a directive. However, in my opinion, personal opinion, which obviously can be questioned, both acts are fundamental, and actually we listened this morning also to a position in that sense. On the one hand, the Istanbul Convention will guide legislative action by the European Union and will hopefully foster a gender-sensitive approach to women's rights. And on the other hand, the directive can be both more flexible because it includes ICT-facilitated violence indeed, and more rigid because its implementation is ensured by the infringement procedure. So these are the legal paths to protect women from violence in Europe. What we need is a better coordination among legal instruments, including the Digital Services Act, but not only this one, and a major involvement of women's rights associations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor De Vito. It was a very clear and accurate reconstruction of what the European Union has done with regard to the accession, and now the discussion about the directive, and we all know how important is this process of harmonization, and we all hope that after the accession of the European Union to the Istanbul Convention, we will have the accession to the European Convention of Human Rights, yeah, which is, of course, more problematic, but this is something that we have to struggle for. So, thank you again, and now we give the floor to the second speaker, Agata Szipulska from the European Institute for Gender Equality. I hope that she can hear us. Yes, she can.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for being with us. Agata Szipulska is working at the European Institute for Gender Equality, and she is also an expert in the field of violence against women. She has recently published a research on addressing intimate partner violence during COVID-19 in the Journal of Gender-Based Violence. So we are very happy to have you, and I'll give you the floor.
Thank you so much, Professor Nicoletti. It is a great pleasure for me to be here and to join you virtually. It is a great pleasure and privilege for the European Institute for Gender Equality to participate in this discussion and also offer our perspective. I have prepared a short presentation, so if I may ask you for a little bit of patience when I share my screen. I hope you can see the presentation now.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. So before I jump to describing our research activities and how we respond to the most pressing challenges regarding gender-based violence, I would like to share a few words with you about our work and about our mission. In our everyday work, AGE strives to achieve key three goals. Our mission is to improve the data collection in member states regarding gender-based violence, to assist EU institutions and member states in their efforts to eradicate violence against women, but also to strengthen their institutional responses to emerging challenges. And to this end, EIGE works together with international and national stakeholders to ensure that, as said by Ursula von der Leyen, Europe stands with women, with protection and support, and violence is prevented, condemned, and prosecuted when occurred. From the very beginning, since our establishment, EIGE has conducted numerous policy-oriented studies and reports regarding gender-based violence and violence against women. Just to name a few of them, we have researched different forms of violence, such as intimate partner violence, rape, femicide, and FGM. We have also explored violence occurring both in digital and non-digital settings. 2 years ago, we have estimated the costs of gender-based violence across the EU, which resulted in finding that gender-based violence cost European Union nearly 300 billion euros per year. And I must say that when we were conducting all these studies, the Istanbul Convention, the golden standards of the Istanbul Convention, and together with the 4P approach that is so important, together with EU legislation, has been guiding us towards achieving our mission. Today, I would like to give you a glimpse of our key research activities on violence against women, which respond to the most pressing challenges we're facing today. And I would like to give a particular attention to three projects that we are currently implementing or will be implementing in the nearest future. That would be our studies on administrative data collection, our contribution to assess the prevalence of disclosed violence across the EU, as well as steps that we are taking to tackle emerging challenges in the context of gender-based violence. Firstly, I would like to start with improving data collection, which is our core activities of gender-based violence team, and we are glad to see the synergies that are visible between Article 11 of the Istanbul Convention and the Article 44 of the proposed directive that was mentioned by Professor De Vido. We are glad to see that these two instruments recognize the fundamental need to collect administrative data and survey data on violence against women. And since the convention already entered into force slightly 3 weeks ago, and the directive is currently being negotiated, we see that these two instruments are getting us are an opportunity to get us closer to so much needed high quality data. Our work on improving administrative data collection started more than 10 years ago, and since then we have produced 5 reports which aim to assist member states in collecting comprehensive, reliable, and comparable data. We have mapped administrative data sources, we have analyzed existing definitions, we have assessed data gaps. One of our biggest achievements in this area are 13 indicators on rape, intimate partner violence, and femicide. These indicators were developed to assess the progress made at national level and enhance the comparability of data and its alignment with institutional human rights standards. And here, of course, I mean the Istanbul Convention. However, when we used 13 indicators to measure the extent of reported intimate violence across the EU, many member states struggled to provide data that covers all components requested by EIGE's indicators. So what were the challenges? For example, what data is missing? When it comes to police indicators, data that was missing concerned age and sex of the perpetrator. And as for justice indicators, the information on sex, age of victims, and as well as specific offenses was simply not there. As a result, earlier this year, we conducted several stakeholders meetings to ensure that the next data collection will be less challenging for member states. We planned to revise and simplify 13 indicators, the data collection tool, as well as the data collection methodology. And we hope that this exercise will allow us to at least reduce the data gap that we currently have on violence against women. My colleagues are currently working on the data collection exercise in all 27 member states, and we hope to finalize this process in next year. However, our work is not limited to administrative data collection, which covers only reported incidents of violence against women. We need to know more about women's experiences, and this knowledge is necessary so that we can adequately respond to their needs. And this could be done by population-based surveys. The first initiative of this kind at the EU level started already some time ago and was initiated by Fundamental Rights Agency. This EU-wide survey was unique in terms of scale. It covered more than 40,000 of women across the EU, covered 28 member states at that time. And thanks to this survey, we learned that 1 in 3 women in the EU have experienced physical and or sexual violence since she was 15 years old. Last year, I teamed up with Fundamental Rights Agency again to assess the prevalence of disclosed violence against women. This way, we are trying to complement Eurostat EU GBV initiative by ensuring that we will collect data in countries which are not covered by Eurostat survey. This way, 18 EU member states will be covered by Eurostat study. Italy will be collecting the data by themselves, but EIGE and FRA will provide violence against women survey in 8 member states that were not covered by Eurostat initiative. That would be Czechia, Germany, Ireland, Cyprus, Luxembourg, Hungary, Romania, and Sweden. After piloting phase, we plan to obtain 1,500 to 2,500 interviews per each member state. So it's a huge research that is being carried out now. My colleagues are in the middle of fieldwork, collecting the interviews. First bits and pieces of data are expected in first months of 2024, and the full report will be available by the end of 2024. And I hope that this unique initiative will give us a fuller picture regarding women's experiences in the EU. Another aspect that I would, and another type of initiative that I would like to share with you concerns strengthening member states' responses to emerging challenges. And I'm sure that we are all aware of the responses that we had to face in the last years. It was not only COVID-19 pandemics, but unfortunately last year we had to face humanitarian crisis of unprecedented scale regarding Ukraine. This difficult situation prompted us to start a new line of research, which would explore the linkages between GBV, gender-based violence and crisis situation, while in 2020 we focused mainly on COVID, this year we are trying to broaden our perspective and also think about displacement, migration, and refugee contexts. Our last project explores the linkages, the implications of military conflicts for women and girls. We know very well, and unfortunately we also learned it in February last year, that beyond the risk of rape at the gunpoint, women in conflict settings also face different types of violence when they are fleeing, when they are migrating and looking for safety. We also know that conflict-related violence result in severe physical and psychological trauma. In some cases, sexual violence can result in unwanted pregnancies and create risks for sexual and reproductive health of women and girls. And this prompted us to launch a new ad hoc research initiative, which aims to map specialized services available for women and girls in the EU who might have been victimized during the conflict or when traveling to EU and looking for safety. Our study focused on 6 specialized services that play a key role in clinical management of sexual violence. Here they are listed on the slide. They cover emergency contraception, STI prevention and treatment, specialized OB/GYN care, short and long-term psychological counseling, as well as safe abortion and post-abortion care. Our study had 2 phases, EU-wide questionnaire, which was sent to all EU member states, and semi-structured interviews that were conducted in 4 selected member states. And our objective was to assess availability, accessibility, acceptability, and quality of specialized services provided upon sexual violence available in the EU. And what are the key results? Firstly, our research highlights that the adoption of Temporary Protection Directive prompted national authorities to integrate persons fleeing war into their national systems. Member states significantly reduced administrative burden to offer temporary protection and approached requests flexibly. However, some findings were alarming, and just to mention a few of them: language barrier, costs of services, insufficient geographical distribution of facilities, and long waiting times restrict access to sexual and reproductive health services for women fleeing war. What is more, restrictive legislation on sexual and reproductive services further hinders access to services that are required by victims of sexual assault. Mandatory consultations, prior procedures, reflection period, or even in some cases, in some member states, the need to obtain a prosecutor's certificate to terminate the pregnancy forces women fleeing Ukraine to travel back to Ukraine or abroad so that they can receive help that they need. Another finding that was highlighted by our study is vulnerability of minors and girls that seek sexual and reproductive services. And this was particularly difficult when it comes to services that need to be provided as soon as possible, such as STI prevention and treatment, emergency contraception, safe abortion, and post-abortion care. What we have also found is that the healthcare sector lacks guidelines and specialized training on how to respond to specific needs of victims of conflict-related violence. We have also found that only 13 member states established rape crisis centers, which are recommended by the Istanbul Convention. In the coming months, we will delve more into GBV and crisis. Our plan is to focus on expanding knowledge on legal and policy instruments to tackle GBV in crisis, to see what are the available tools and methods to prevent, identify victims, and protect them from further violence, as well as strengthen EU member states' capacities to create national strategies of prevention. Thank you so much for your attention. I think that our work, of course, our work regarding this new project will be following very closely the standards that were set by the Istanbul Convention. And I hope that later next year I will be able to share more findings regarding this study. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much to you for this presentation and also for the cooperation that you mentioned. You show us how important is the question of data collection in all our countries, which is of course a big issue also for our scientific work, and then the situation of specific vulnerabilities related to war or migration or other situation. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think that we can give now the floor to our third speaker for her keynote speech, and it is my pleasure and honor to introduce Maria Andriani Costopoulou, president of the Grevio. She has been working on women's rights and violence against women as a lawyer at the Supreme Court of Greece and through various positions at the Council of Europe and now at the Grevio. For all of us, the cooperation with Grevio is very important in the Grevio work. The cooperation with the universities, I think that is important to collect data and to analyze different situations in the different countries. And so I'm particularly grateful to Mrs. Costopoulou for her presence, and we are looking forward to listen to her speech. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jaren. Allow me to begin by thanking the organizers for the kind invitation to speak. It is a privilege for me to be here, and I'm happy also to see familiar faces. So I would like to share with you my input on Grevio's country monitoring work, as well as on the important role that the educational and academic system can play in the implementation of the Istanbul Convention. I wish I could see more men in the room, but we are not discouraged at all. We are only motivated. So the aim of the Istanbul Convention, as we all know, is to ensure a holistic approach to all forms of violence against women. To this end, Grevio works in a country-by-country basis, carrying out assessments and evaluations, collecting data from various sources, and finally adopting and publishing relevant evaluation reports. I would like to share with you some recent developments, starting by saying that Grevio is now close to complete its baseline evaluation round. This baseline evaluation round covers the full spectrum of articles of the Istanbul Convention. Till today, Grevio has adopted 36 reports, and this is the reason that I couldn't join you earlier today. I was in Strasbourg for the plenary of Grevio, where we adopted the reports in respect of Greece, the Republic of Moldova, Ireland, and Liechtenstein. So 36 reports. At the same time, this year, Grevio launched its first thematic evaluation round on the overarching topic of building trust by delivering support, protection, and justice to women victims of domestic violence and gender-based violence. So this first thematic evaluation round will focus on selected provisions. The time scope is 2023-2031, and you will see that among other issues in the questionnaire we ask questions trying to identify any trends recent trends on various forms, new forms of violence against women, as well as innovative approaches especially on primary prevention. Currently, this new round of evaluation has been launched with regard to 8 parties. 4 of them, Albania, Austria, Denmark, and Monaco, already have undergone the evaluation visit by Grevio, and next to follow are Finland, Montenegro, Portugal, and Sweden. Another development that was discussed and presented very comprehensively by Ms. De Viro is the accession of the EU to the Istanbul Convention. As of the 1st of October, the Istanbul Convention entered into force with regard to the EU. And now, what is at stake for Grevio is to define the exact scope of evaluation of this international organization, to consider its evaluation tools, in other words, to understand and to agree upon the concrete implications of this major step of this ratification. So having briefly mentioned, I would like also to mention another other update. So a few weeks ago, we published our 4th general report on our activities that covers the period of January to December 2022. And the focus section that we have chosen for this activity report concerns the issue of sexual violence, criminalization, investigation on sexual violence, and there is a comparative analysis also of good practices in this field, apart from the issue of the consent-based criminalization. So let me now continue with analyzing the important role that academia can play in the implementation of the Istanbul Convention, a role that has both procedural and substantive aspects. Now, at a procedural level, in its evaluation process, Grevio can be assisted by NGOs, by members of the civil society, national human rights institutions, and along with other organizations and agencies, academia can contribute to the evaluation procedure of a state party, either by submitting a shadow report to Grevio or through meetings with the Grevio's delegation during the evaluation visit. The academia is in a position to greatly assist and enhance the work of Grevio, and their findings and input on issues related to gender equality, to gender-based violence, are taken into consideration and are given due weight in Grevio's evaluation reports. Many of you will be aware of this already, as Unire sent a written submission to Grevio during the evaluation of Italy back in 2019 exactly. And at the same time, some members of the academia, including representatives of Unire, met with Grevio's delegation during the evaluation visit. So if you see the report, which was published in January 2020, you will see that there are specific references to the contribution of academia for the drafting of the report. And I think that this sets an example of good practice and source of inspiration. Now that was the procedural, let's say, aspect. Let's continue with the substantive provisions of the Istanbul Convention and the role of the academia in this field. I would like to draw your attentions to Articles 11, 14, and 15 of the Istanbul Convention. So Article 11, in its first paragraphs, it requires that parties support research. Why? To deepen knowledge on the root causes and effects of violence against women, on incidence and conviction rates, as well as on the efficiency of measures taken in implementation of the Convention. So we can all understand that commonly academic institutions, research institutions, and individual researchers will be in charge of conducting this research in the field, research which is relevant, first of all, for awareness-raising purposes only. Not, of course, only for this, but also beyond that, this research can be and should indeed be used to inform evidence-based policy making in the relevant country. If you see the explanatory report of the Istanbul Convention, it highlights the essential, that it is essential that parties base their policies, that they base their measures to prevent and combat violence against women on state-of-the-art research. Research indeed can contribute greatly to improving day-to-day real-world responses, to provide such responses to violence against women by the judiciary, by support services and law enforcement agencies. So Grevio has identified both good practices and deficiencies in the support, including financial support given to academic institutions and members of the academia. Let me start by referring to some examples. So a good practice example in this regard has been noted in the baseline evaluation of Sweden, where considerable amounts of funding were allocated to different actors for research projects on a wide range of issues in the area of violence against women, including honor-related violence. So there were also examples where the findings of the studies actually fed into the designing of public policies to prevent and combat violence against women. Now, on other cases, Grevio has led to a different conclusion. For example, in the case of Belgium, although a large number of research projects had been conducted, Grevio noted that these studies did not have any concrete impact on policy making. In other cases, such as in Albania, no support had been given to universities in order to conduct research on relevant issues, despite the known interest of the academic environment. Now, coming to the second paragraph of Article 11 of the Istanbul Convention, we will see that it requires from states to conduct population-based surveys at regular intervals. Why? To assess the prevalence of and the trends in all forms of violence covered by the scope of the Istanbul Convention. So such surveys carried out by academia are a very important source, and extremely, I would say, important source of information. And in the case of victims of violence who do not seek assistance, they can actually be the only source of information we have. More specifically, victims can provide reasons for not reporting, information about their personal experience and the services that they have received. So prevalence surveys also help raise public, political, and professional awareness. Combined with academic research, they constitute key elements of effective policy making. And Grevio has noted in quite a few baseline evaluation reports the contribution of universities and independent research centers on conducting such surveys, for example, Sweden and Iceland. Now, to sum up the requirements stemming from Article 11 of the Istanbul Convention, state parties should support research. They should use this research for policy making and policy evaluation, there need to be actual links between findings of researchers and policy making and policy evaluation. In addition, trends and prevalence in forms of violence against women should be assessed in light of population-based surveys. I will continue with Article 14 of the Istanbul Convention. So this article stipulates that parties must take the necessary steps to include teaching material in formal curricula at all levels of education, primary, secondary, tertiary, teaching material adapted to the evolving capacity of learners on issues such as equality between men and women, non-stereotyped gender roles, mutual respect, non-violent conflict resolution in interpersonal relationships, gender-based violence against women, and the right to personal integrity. Now, the Convention also requires that parties promote the above-mentioned principles in informal educational facilities, as well as in sports, cultural, and leisure facilities and the media. Now, we can all understand that it must not be left to individual teachers, individual professors to integrate these topics into the curricula. Instead, it's the state's responsibility to provide teaching material and guidance to teachers. So any initiative of individual teachers should not substitute the state's responsibility in this respect. Now, in this context, Grevio has encouraged states to incorporate teaching about the various forms of gender-based violence against women in curricula at all levels of formal education, from pre-primary to higher education, and to develop relevant pedagogical resources on such issues. Some examples. In Albania, Grevio noted that steps had been taken to endow pupils with skills, with competencies, which can help them recognize, understand, and condemn violence against women and girls. And this was done by mainstreaming gender-related issues in educational curricula, in textbooks, and in other pedagogical material. In the same regard, in France, the issue of gender equality is mainstreamed into the common core curriculum in the fields of literature, history, moral and civic education, and life and earth sciences. So, I understand. To some extent, I will say. Relatively, in the baseline evaluation report on Portugal, Grevio noted positively that teachers are provided with a wide range and in-depth material which promotes an education free from gender stereotypes. More specifically, this material was found to include practical activities which combined the topic of gender equality with a series of cross-cutting thematic materials. Examples: sexual and reproductive health, security, including internet security, sexism and stereotypes, and non-violent dating. Another aspect that can be addressed here, I think, is the children's need to be empowered regarding their rights, including the right to say no. Grevio has noted in the case of Denmark that since boys and girls, they experience violence differently, the gender dimension must be reflected in the teaching material. So linkages should be made to gender roles and stereotypes. Thus, Grevio urged the Danish authorities to complement their focus on children's rights by paying special attention to the gender dimension. In terms of the implementation of Article 14, I think it's also crucial to monitor how teachers make use of existing teaching materials. And I have in mind the example of the Netherlands, where Grevio was concerned because of the lack of quality standards for the implementation of the core objectives of the teaching material. So the teachers didn't know exactly how actually to implement, how to teach this gender-related material. So Grevio encouraged the Dutch authorities to ensure that the teaching and the implementation of the sexuality and gender equality educational objectives were standardized at all schools throughout the country. Another aspect to consider in relation to Article 14 is the prevention and response to violence against women and girls that may happen in the context of education. To this end, alongside the proper training of the professionals, due regard must be paid to the creation of appropriate facilities and settings capable of encouraging and facilitating reporting, but also facilities which are equipped to support victims of such incidents. So Grevio has positively noted that in Monaco there is a law that provides that all schools shall report on an annual basis, pursuant to the legal provisions applying to educational institutions, on measures for the prevention and early detection of violence and on proposed victim support services. Now, France is also considered to have adopted some good practices. I'm looking at my French friends. So Grevio welcomed the French initiative to set up and develop a network of persons responsible for the prevention of discrimination. A network which is present in most higher education institutions. These persons are officials who have been trained both in gender equality and anti-discrimination, and in how to prevent, how to handle gender-based violence and harassment. Now, in the same direction, I would like to mention another example in Greece. The Marangopoulos Foundation for Human Rights, I have the pleasure to be the vice director of the foundation. It's an international NGO based in Athens. Concluded recently a memorandum of cooperation with the University of Athens, and this memorandum provides for the establishment of easy accessible and confidential report platform, which is followed up with the provision of legal aid, free legal aid and support to individuals who fall victims of any form of violence within the university sphere. Now, to sum up the principles stemming from Article 14 of the Istanbul Convention, inclusion of teaching material in formal curricula for all levels on issues of gender equality, gender-based violence, and I referred to them in details. Need for monitoring for harmonized implementation of this teaching material, provision of quality standards, and establishment of appropriate facilities for the identification of victims of violence against women and girls and for their support. I will continue with Article 15, which is an important article that concerns training. This provision calls on states to provide or strengthen appropriate training for relevant professionals that deal with victims or perpetrators of all acts of violence that are covered by the scope of the Istanbul Convention. We usually in Grevio refer to the need for initial and in-service mandatory training of all professionals on a broad range of issues relevant to the prevention and detection of violence against women, on equality between women and men, the needs of victims, the particular dynamics of violence against women, and on the need to prevent secondary victimization. Now, this training, we can all understand, can be provided by the academia to other professionals, including law enforcement officials, judges, lawyers, and health professionals. In general, the aim of the trainings is to expand the capacity of professionals, first of all, to identify victims of violence and then to respond effectively. The role of academia in the achievement of this difficult task is essential. It is necessary to include compulsory modules specifically devoted to violence against women in undergraduate and postgraduate university programs, as well as judicial schools and police academies. We need to train judges, we need to train police officers. At the same time, training can be provided to members of the educational system themselves, including teachers. We know that they play an important role in identifying children who may be living in an environment exposed to violence, but also children that may experience violence in the school setting. In Albania, for example, Grevio noted with satisfaction that teachers are being sensitized to gender-related matters through university study programs of the faculties of educational and social sciences, as well as through various teacher training programs. On the contrary, Grevio has highlighted that in France, despite the existence of specific tools provided by the national educational system, teacher sensitivity to equality issues varies greatly. Why? Because their training on this subject is not mandatory. So to summarize my point regarding Article 15, we need quality training, compulsory training, initial and in-service training for all professionals. Now, I mentioned Articles 11, 14, and 15, and you will ask me, this is all? No. I would like to underline that academia plays an important role in the implementation of a number of provisions of the Istanbul Convention. In 2 words, let me say that, for example, academic publications are a useful tool for the fulfillment of Article 12, which is about general obligations in the field of prevention. Also, the academic publications can promote changes in mentality, changes in attitudes, which are influenced by stereotypes and gender-biased traditions. In the case of Poland, Grevio noted positively initiatives for the preparation of an information campaign by a research center which helped raise awareness in the context of Article 13 for violence against children. Academia can also be relevant in the implementation of Article 4. This is the article regarding the principle of non-discrimination. An example of this can be found in the case of Slovenia. There we had an advisory body consisting of members of academia, among others, which was responsible for the implementation of relevant policies. So I can continue, no need. My point is that the role of academia is extremely important in the implementation of the Istanbul Convention. We can say that academia can meaningfully contribute in the implementation of all 4 pillars of the Istanbul Convention: policies, prevention, protection, and prosecution of perpetrators. So the educational and academic systems produce knowledge and data, can inform national policies, can raise awareness, can educate future generations, and can train professionals. As we understand, it's important that academia is supported by states in assuming its significant role in the implementation of the Istanbul Convention. We have all tools available. We have the guidance. We have the people. And I think that today's conference is a testimony of the commitment that members of the academia have to contribute to making possible a life free from violence for all women. Now it's time, I think, that we saw all countries taking further steps to support the educational and academic system in this important role. Thank you very much for your attention. Should you have any question, I'm very happy to address. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Maria Andriani Costopoulou, President of Grevio, for this very inspiring speech, not only for informing us about the activities of the Grevio, for mentioning previous good practices of cooperation between academia and the Grevio, in Italy, for example, but also and especially, I would say, for this kind of wonderful manifesto for the cooperation between academia and the Council of Europe and Grevio in particular, with the mention of the possible contributions, the procedural level, at substantive level, with all things that can be done related to Article 11, 14 and 15. I think that this is really an excellent program for all our networks. I would say not only in the framework of the Istanbul Convention, but also in the framework of other conventions of the Council of Europe. It would be wonderful if other organs of the Council of Europe will agree about this kind of systematic cooperation between the Council and academia. So thank you very much indeed. It was a great contribution. I think that we have some time for questions to our three speakers. So the microphone is there, and please very short questions so that our speakers can...
Hello, my name is Katarzyna Sękowska-Kozłowska. I'm from Poland. I have two questions. First to Sara, thank you very much for your presentation. I was wondering about these controversies with regard to including rape into the directive. Is it purely legal problem, or is there something behind it? You know what I mean, all this ideological things, or maybe something more. So I would be happy to know more. And another question is to Agata. Hello, Agata. I was wondering, because I think that we are really waiting for another survey, and the FRA survey was really something breaking through. So I'm a little bit confused about these various agencies like Eurostat and EIGE and FRA doing the job. So my question is it only on the level of gathering data and there will be one report having all results, or is there any other structure, because I got confused? And is it the same methodology that was used in FRA research, and you will just repeat it, or is it very substantial change with regard to that one research? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe we can collect other questions and then...
My name is Monika Platek, and I'm also from Poland, and I have a question to both of you. As far as the accepting convention within the EU structure, what I would like to know, what was the easiest and what was the most difficult to get through? And as far as the Grevio report, I would like to, well, thank you very much for really pointing those articles that are saying that we should have it within the academia. It's somehow we omit it with having so many problems with other articles to get implemented. But I would like to know, where do you have a success where the Grevio report really bring about the changes and the implementation in the countries? Where was it? And what happened, if you have such examples? Okay.
Thank you. Anybody?
Thank you, Cristina Oddone. My question is on chapter 7, migration and asylum. I would like to have your insight, especially Sarah's insight concerning the implementation of the Istanbul Convention by the EU. We just heard that it entered into force on the 1st of October. And we know that on the 4th of October, we had the European Pact on Migration and Asylum signed in Granada, where restrictions to immigrations were voted and found consensus by all European member states. And we also had, a few days later, the Israeli-Palestinian crisis with the Schengen borders appearing again, the suspension of Schengen, actually. So I would like you to comment maybe on this contradiction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
One more question,
Yeah.
and then we give the floor to our
This is
speaker.
Ceren Akçabay from Turkey. I would like to ask to Ms. President, my question is, what role academia can play in countries who are not part of convention, who are not a part of convention anymore, let's say? You may recall that in the period of Turkey's evolution process, a shadow report was written civil society by civil society organizations. It was, I think, it was 81 civil society organizations collaboration, both feminists and LGBTIs. So when we consider our struggle for gender equality and our, let's say, experience on struggling with gender-based violence, it's, I think it's not sensible to wait to ratify the convention again. So what would we can do now? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So please, Sarah, you like
Thank
to...
you. Yeah, thank you very much for the questions. And I forgot before to say, and since Kasia and Christina asked two questions, that they're both authors of the commentary to the Istanbul Convention that I co-edited with my colleague Michaela Frulli, and also Marina Calloni, Daniela Belliti contributed to it, and it will be out on December. So Marina told me that I could mention that, so thank you so much. And so Kasia took the word. So yes, thank you very much for the question. With regard to rape, as it's first of all a legal issue because of the Eurocrimes which are included in Article 83, paragraph 1 of the TFEU. It's a fixed list of Eurocrimes, so sexual exploitation was defined by the European Commission. There is no binding legal definition at international level. And the struggle is precisely whether or not rape could fall under this definition. But in my understanding, talking also to scholars, also in Poland and in other countries, it's not only a legal issue, it's also a strong political issue. And one reason is that with regard to female genital mutilation, if we want to also endorse a post-colonial look at and overview perspective at the Istanbul Convention on female genital mutilation, which again falls under the category sexual exploitation in the understanding of the European Commission, there is no objection to that. And we might also think that there might be legal issues there. So I think it's both legal and political issue. And of course, legal issue for the domestic system, that's obvious. The other colleague from Poland, sorry, I couldn't catch your name, so sorry for that. Well, easiest and difficult part, it was in all cases very difficult. I mean, I'm not sure I can say something was easy. There was the will to accede to the Istanbul Convention by especially the European Parliament and the European Commission. It is difficult because when we talk about criminal law issues, obviously it is part of sovereignty of states. A lot strong a sense for the sovereignty and the criminal system. So obviously that part was very difficult, but not only this part, also with regards to protection and prevention, there was a struggle related to the definition of gender, for example, and we can see that clearly in how actually the general approach of the Council was later issued removing the definition. So I'm not sure whether there was something really, really easy. Part because, of course, it's understandable. The EU has its own competencies written in the treaty. We can ask the EU to do more than what is written in the treaty. That's absolutely clear and obvious. But at the same time, there were a lot of political struggle from states that were more conservatives. This morning, this word was used several times, and that actually didn't accept the accession to the Istanbul Convention. I'm thinking about the states that have not ratified the Istanbul Convention yet, but they are bound by those provisions of the Istanbul Convention to which the EU, for which the EU has competence. So that is the legal struggle. So probably there was something easy, but nothing comes to my mind, really. There was a very long, very interesting also debate at European level, but a very difficult and ongoing one. And finally, Christina, thank you so much for your question. As I mentioned before, there are surely possibilities also in terms of amendment to European Union legislation with regard to migration issue. There is no reservation by the EU on the chapter on migration. So there are clearly legal obligations. I'm afraid in the debate, talking about easy and difficult part, in the debate, the legal basis regarding migration is not really mentioned. And that is problematic. We will see whether this is a good or not implementation of the Istanbul Convention on the part of the EU. But that's surely there, legal obligation. So it's not only a political act. Accession to the Istanbul Convention entails legal obligations. This is really law. So obviously there are legal obligations. Can the EU do something in that respect? Yes, because it's used in the decision on accession, Article 78, paragraph 2 of the TFU. And contradictions, I'm afraid, are part of the political struggle these days. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I wonder if Agatha is still with us.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I am here and I am happy to clarify the confusion regarding Eurostat survey and our joint initiative carried out by FRA colleagues and EIGE colleagues. Thank you very much, Kasia, for your question. I would like to clarify that when survey, FRA survey was conducted in 2012, afterwards the task, the responsibility of carrying out survey was assigned to Eurostat. And when methodology of this survey was improved, then it turned out that only 18 member states decided to agree to cooperate with Eurostat, and some of the member states opted out. So our initiative, together with FRA, is only covering those 8 member states that did not agree, and this way we are hoping to fill up this data gap that we would inevitably have. As for the reports and publications, so actually the EU GBV survey, which is carried out by Eurostat, the work has already been started. It has started in 2020, and it will be finalized in 2024, if I'm correct. However, Eurostat is releasing the data in batches. Some of them, I think the first batch was already published last year in autumn, and they will be releasing it as more data is available. As for our joint initiative, we will get first part of the data next year, but then we have to go through the data cleaning process and publication process. So our report by EIGE and FRA will be available by the end of 2024. Thank you so much. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you very much. And now the floor is to
Thank you very much. About success stories, if you ask me if there is a champion, if there is a perfect state, I will say there is none, of course. There are positive steps taken that are identified in the reports. There are areas where states are lagging behind. And this is what we are trying to do in Grevio. On the one hand, to shed light on what has worked well in practice, but also to try to see what doesn't work well and how states can take further measures to address these shortcomings. A comparative analysis of good practices and of problems, shortcomings, can be found in the midterm horizontal evaluation report of Grevio, which is public in the website of Grevio. So for each and every article, you will be able to find comparative analysis with special references to promising practices and problems, including systemic problems that have been identified at national level. Now, regarding the EU accession, at this point, me personally, I cannot say more because it is exactly an issue that we are discussing in Grevio. What I can publicly only say is that Grevio established earlier on this week a working group which will specifically focus on this issue. We all understand that everybody is looking at Grevio right now to see what Grevio will do in terms of, especially, and I highlight this, the scope of the evaluation of EU and the tools that will be used for this purpose. We are well aware of this, and we're taking steps by steps progressively to progress in this field. For the time being, this is what I can say. I cannot say more. Now, regarding states that have not ratified or states that Turkey, which has withdrawn. Now, generally, regarding states that have never ratified, we understand that the academia can play an important role in promoting this ratification and in dismantling myths and countering misinformation, because there is a lot around Istanbul Convention. Now, for the example of Turkey, and given the particular context, I think that still academia has an important role alongside other members of the civil society organizations in promoting the values that are enshrined in the Istanbul Convention. The values are there, the principles are there. So even if the state is not bound typically, let's say, by it, the academia can still promote these values, can still raise awareness about them, can still train judges. And I'm aware of examples of states that are not bound by the Istanbul Convention, where judiciary law professionals do receive such training that addresses the values, the principles included in the Istanbul Convention. Thank you.
So thank you so much to our speaker, to Sara De Vido, Agata Skipulska, and Maria Andriani Kostopoulo for this wonderful section, for their contribution. Now we deserve a coffee, and Marina. Yeah.
So we are keen to offer a coffee. I hope that it is enough because of the budget, but we are keen to offer the coffee. It will be in the building U7, first floor, that is direct after the fountains, and it's first floor. Then there will be the parallel sections in 3 different buildings. One is here with Riva, Professor Riva, and then 3 will be on the same building, U7, at the 2nd and 3rd floor, and then 2 in U6, that is a building in perpendicular after the U7. So we need 5 minutes just to move, and then the other issue is that we'll have 2 persons, a chair for each parallel section, plus another colleague or who will assist also the chair, and perhaps also to take some notes so that during tomorrow for the conclusion we can also say what were the results, problem, issue, potentiality, good practices which emerge in the parallel sections. Okay, I hope that the coffee will be enough for all, so we'll see, okay. Thank you.